All right, welcome back. So now we're going to talk about wire transaction alerts. Okay, so that's another area of AML. So now let's break it down. What alerts are pretty much. So let's look at it about it in like average everyday terms. So when a bank has transactions, whether it be wire transactions or credit card, debit card, whatever the case may be, they have rules set up in the system. Now these rules are set up so that if these rules are violated, those transactions, the transaction or the transactions that violate those rules will be flagged for further review. Okay, so if you're looking at jobs that talk about processing alerts or reviewing alerts, those alerts are generated because certain transactions ran afoul of these rules. So, for example, let's say the rule is um, any transaction over $100,000. Okay, the bank would want to have more information about, whether it be a wire or prepaid wire, not really prepaid card, wire, credit card, debit card, things of that nature. So what that means is any transaction that is 100,000 or more is going to violate that rule, and as a result, that transaction is going to be flagged for further review. As an analyst, whether you be an analyst, consultant, whatever your role is, you then come in and now you have to go and say, okay, well, this is the alert, this is the transaction. Does this transaction line up with any of our red flags? Now you would think, well, if the system alerted the wire, then that means it's for a reason, right? Not necessarily. See, many times these wires have what do I call exceptions, right? So let's say the wire is $100,000, but in order to be a red flag, it requires transactions of 150 or more in the U.S. or 75,000 or more in a high risk jurisdiction. Okay. Now, high risk jurisdictions are determined by the bank. We'll get into that in a later video. So now, once you have that, so if we look at the transaction, it was 100,000. If all the parties to the transaction are in the U.S., then the red flag would not apply because it's not a high risk jurisdiction. It is the U.S. So then the U.S. red flag amount, the threshold is 150,000 for this example. So if that's the case, then we'll say this is a false positive. Okay. But let's say this was the wire started in the U.S. and was going to Panama, and Panama was determined or was deemed as a high risk jurisdiction for your bank. Then at that point, you would review the transaction and realize, okay, it's 100,000. So the only number that it could associate with is if it's a high risk jurisdiction, because it's over 75,000. You look at the jurisdictions that the entities are in. You see one is in Panama. You'll check the list of countries, realize that Panama is considered high risk. As a result, that transaction now gets a tagged a red flag. Okay. Now each bank is going to do it differently. Some banks may then have you do research on the alert level. So all the entities that are alerted, you'd have to research them. Some banks have it so that transactions come in. Once those transactions are moved to alerts, once those transactions are flagged or alerted, they assign a red flag. If a red flag actually is assigned, it moves to a case level. Then someone, whether it be you or it could be a coworker or someone else, will then conduct research on those entities. So sometimes the alerts, for some banks, there's no research done on the alert level, only on the case level. Some banks have you do research on the alert level instead of the case level. Just depends on the bank. There are going to be differences. You just kind of have to be aware of that. All right. So when you're looking at these alerts, you're looking at the originating bank. You're looking at the originator. So that's the person who sent the transaction. Looking at the originated bank, the bank that they use. You're looking at any kind of correspondent bank. And we're going to go into correspondent accounts in another video as well, because that's something that can get kind of confusing. So we're going to go talk about correspondent accounts and also payable through accounts. And some other topics or areas that I know can be somewhat confusing. All right. So then we have sorry, I lost my train of thought. We have the originator, the originating bank. Then we have either a sender correspondent and or a receiver correspondent. You don't always have, you may have none, you may have both, you may have one, just depends. Then you have the beneficiary bank and the beneficiary. Okay, so those are like the typical headlines. You also have, the transaction number, the date, and the amount. Okay, then at the end of the transaction, you're going to also have what's called OBI, which is originating bank information. So when you're sending a wire, I don't know if you guys ever sent a wire before. When you send a wire, you have the ability to write like something in the comments field, like, for let's say you're paying your daughter's tuition for Sally's tuition, right? That's you've been OBI. That doesn't really have much bearing, but it will give the person who's receiving it to kind of get an idea. Okay, this money is for this, right? Oftentimes companies put like an invoice number there, so you'll see invoice so and so. You'll see if it may say invoice, it may just have a number to it. It depends, but you also have to be aware because different banks have been fined for removing information about like the wire, like the originating country or the country it was going to, a la Syria, and putting in like a code, and that code meant that it was actually for this country, and they were stripping information from the wires. I believe Commerce Bank might have been one of those, but don't quote me. But I think I remember reading that complaint. All right, so you have the originating bank information and then the beneficiary bank information. So these are all columns in the wire, right? Now your job is to be able to read the wire. So one skill that if you're looking at alerts jobs or jobs that deal with kind of transaction monitoring and things of that nature, you want to talk about your ability to read Excel files. If you haven't done pivot tables, it's a couple of courses online you can find free of charge that can help you learn pivot tables to give you an idea. So things like that is what you're going to need. There's other ways of getting more robust information. My course, it's closed for now, but when it does reopen, we do cover that in the course. But it all depends on what do you want to do. All right, so that's when you're looking at alerts. Now there's multiple red flags, right? So your bank is going to have a set red flags. They're going to be different. Each bank will be different in regards to like the amounts. The red flags themselves don't really change much. I've seen the same red flags pretty much in multiple banks. The thresholds, maybe the monetary thresholds may change, and maybe instead of 3 transactions, it'd be 4 transactions. Instead of 100,000, it'd be 150,000. But the actual substance of it really doesn't change. And if it's just changing numbers, that's something that can easily be adapted. All right, so that's what you want to know when it comes to red flags, it comes to alerts, transaction monitoring, and things of that nature. We're going to go into case notes. Like I said, we're going to talk about the black market peso exchange. We'll talk about correspondent accounts. We're going to talk about pay through accounts, hawalas, things of that nature, trade-based money laundering, trade finance. All that is going to be covered, all right? So that's what I want you to be aware of and look forward to. So that's it for today. I'm hoping you guys really learn stuff. If you have any questions, again, comment down below, and I'll get back to you. I'll have that one video when we just group everything together. All right. I try to respond to all the comments. I don't always get to, but I try to. If you have any questions, just let me know. All right. Great talking to you guys. We'll talk to you soon.